All right, and we are at the top of the hour. A couple people have filed in. Welcome, everyone. Let's jump right in. So, hi, everyone. Welcome to webinar number 8 in our 9-part series here on the strategies and technologies shaping the future of staffing. My name is Joe Calzone. I'm the VP of Front Office at Newbury Partners, and I'll be the host today. So these 30-minute sessions are really designed to be a short, actionable, and laser-focused session based on solving the real challenges that staffing firms face every day. So whether you're a recruiter, an operator, or an executive, there's something here for you. Let me share my screen real quick. That might help. Cool. So today we'll be focusing on Manual No More, how to get AI ready and automate what's holding you back. First off, I'd like to thank our sponsors as we dive into this session. And next, I'd really like to thank our 2 panelists that I'll be speaking with today and moderating. Teresa Koster, with founder and CEO of Meet Dwight, as well as Sarah Moss, our very own VP of Technology Advisory here at Newbury Partners. Welcome. So today we're going to tackle something that every staffing firm wrestles with: manual work. Now, how do we go from endless data entry and disconnected workflows? How do we take these pain points, that drain productivity, and prevent teams from being truly AI ready here? I'd like to hop right in. If we look at it, item number 1 on the agenda, let's dive into assessing AI readiness. How do you assess where you are? How do you go determine if you can actually drive value there? We'll then look at identifying manual pain points that we can eradicate with automation, and then step towards an automated future to close things out there. So let's jump right in on assessing AI enablement. Dries, let's start with you. When you work with staffing firms, what does it really mean to be AI ready? What needs to be in place before AI can actually deliver value?
Yeah, so first of all, it's Sarah's birthday, so happy birthday, Sarah.
Thank you.
And the reason why I call Sarah out is we'll have kind of different perspective on this, Joe. Obviously, in terms of what we do, we're very much focused on middle and back office processes, less so the top of funnel side, which I'm sure Sarah can cover in more detail. But for us, it's really, if you look at some of AI automations out there, there's a lot of focus on getting your data clean, and not so with what we tend to do. So for us, it's all about understanding your processes, and understanding as well of what is the impact on people's time mainly, and or revenue generative activities of those kind of processes. So for us, it's all about what are those kind of steps in the process and how well do you understand them. If you understand them pretty well and you understand the kind of impact, and the answer to the question of, if we're able to automate this, what does it look like for business? What are the gains? Then that puts people in pretty good shape. So people that don't know the process very well, typically is much harder for us to then go and automate those processes in the middle and back office.
Yeah, interesting point you bring up there, right? The dichotomy between kind of that top of funnel activity that typically, you're right, historically, I think, okay, clean data, absolutely necessary. But what I'm hearing from you is a bit more of a focus on, hey, you need to know your process. That's the table stakes there. Data we can handle, process we need to tease out, the really important pieces there. Interesting. Sarah, you see firms at different stages of maturity there. What are the biggest gaps you see when it comes to AI enablement? Whether that's around data, process, people.
I do like those comments about processes. That processes are really important, but I co-lead our AI leadership collective, where we have cohorts of staffing executives and leaders, managers, and we help them on their AI journey. So that's where I'm answering this question from. And what I would say is processes for sure, but even taking a step back, I think it's important, and I guess we all recognize just what a massive change AI is at every level and across our entire organization, and certainly all our processes. But I would say on the maturity curve, everybody needs to start with change, at their own desk and in their own role and wearing all the hats they wear. And so I would say on the maturity curve, we see executive adoption really needs to come first. And it's an interesting thing because with so many big changes on this, with so many big changes, executives don't need to adopt the change. They just implement the change. And then with AI, they have to adopt the change. They have to be change ready. So we love to talk to execs about how to adopt AI themselves and then, cascade that throughout the organization. So executives first, and then we see, kind of as a next stage, we know that people at their desks are using AI, so getting them to adopt it and offering them a tool, talking to them about how they're using it, that would be a next level of maturity, and formalizing that with a kind of a guardrails like governance policy and figuring out who that champion is, that might be a next level. And then certainly where Joyce was going around processes and prioritizing those and shaping those into a strategy. So, and then I guess that shift from generative AI into agentic AI. So hopefully that kind of lays out a maturity curve. And we see, really, I think there's a lot of talk about what we could do, what's available and all that, but I think a lot of people are very early in the maturity curve. So if you're there, know that everybody's, the vast majority of people are right there with you.
Yeah, and I think you hit on one really interesting point that I want to pull on that thread a little bit, right? So when we look at AI, typically, executives might be making decisions on technology that they don't need to use in their day to day. But you hit on a really interesting point there with, AI is for everyone, essentially to kind of distill that down to a statement. And I think that really neatly kind of ties back to our quote here: AI will not replace humans, but those who use AI will replace those who don't, right? It's pervasive throughout the organization. It can make everyone more effective in their day to day, and I think that's been a really interesting trend that strikes me as well. Dries, I want to kind of go back to a bit of what you said there, right? And if we kind of stage it up, the must have in order to be successful with AI enablement with Meet Dwight is understanding your process. And I'd like you to comment a bit on what does that mean? So I'm a client, I come to you and I say, hey, I know my process. What do the successful clients look like there? Do they have a documented workflow and process? Do they have SMEs that can talk about it as a combination of both? Like, if I'm going to be wildly successful with Meet Dwight, what do I come to the table with? What's the ideal world?
Yeah, so listen, we automate people's existing processes over their existing systems. That's essentially what we do. But obviously, we can only automate what a client tells us to go and automate. So do they need to have the process documented? Not necessarily. Does it help? It sure does. But certainly if you have the knowledge of your process and you're able to communicate it to us, typically we ask clients to show us what the process looks like, then that's fine. We can go and document it. Typically people know their vanilla process. The bits that sometimes live in different people's heads is the kind of, the exceptions. So for this client, it's like this, for that client, it's like this. And I guess now unsurprisingly to me, but certainly in the beginning, surprisingly, even with some large organizations, it's amazing how little of that is documented and how much there's that reliance on one or maybe two key team members, which forget about AI and automation, just from a business continuity perspective isn't necessarily best practice, right? I just want to flip back very quickly as well to that kind of maturity curve and adoption. Obviously I'm biased, but we've got some clients that are also investors, so they're presidents, CEOs of staffing firms that also are invested in on our advisory board. And what's interesting is what they've kind of called out is, looking again at that kind of middle and back office. If I've got 4 people doing this process over here, it's manual, it's administratively heavy. They have certainly articulated, hey, we're more likely to start in that middle and back office because we know exactly the saving we're going to achieve with that, right? There's, for some of those firms, there's some nervousness at the kind of top of funnel stuff, in part because we've seen with some of our clients, they've tried AI and automation and it's failed in some cases because of lack of user adoption. which is another important point with the kind of automations and AI that we do. It kind of lives and sits in the background. Dwight just kind of does the tasks in the background. There is no such thing as challenge with user adoption. So I'm sure you guys at Newbury, I'm sure help organizations to make sure that there is that kind of good user adoption. But I just wanted to call that out as well, maybe for Sarah to comment on too.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask Sarah,
you make yourself a cup of tea, Joe. I've got this, man.
Making my job easy today. Yeah, Sarah, I wonder if you have any thoughts on kind of the change management, the adoption aspects, especially in the context of, the AI leadership forums, kind of designed or tailor-made to kind of go help people get started on that journey. Have you seen any trends kind of arise over, the couple months of sessions that we've been doing there as you kind of iterate with various leaders?
Yeah, and I want to echo something I said before too, which is just wherever you're at in the maturity curve personally, you're not alone there. So what I would say is, what we're seeing is people have been experimenting with it in general. There's obviously the outliers, but people have been experimenting with generative AI, but really haven't had any robust training around it. So I think we probably have that group of early adopters and those secret users, right, who are already adopting generative AI and integrating that into their day-to-day and maybe not talking about it too much. And then we have other folks maybe who are needing help or haven't, don't have access to a paid license. And you definitely, I think that's a key enablement piece is you need to get them that $20 per month or $30 per month license to something, Copilot, Gemini, my favorite, GPT, Claude. I personally have all of them. I love them all. And then I think just a bit of training that's going to help. And I think also a policy helps because it states that, you expect usage and you're putting those guardrails in place. And I think, like I say, creating that champion so we all know who to talk to, who's that cheerleader for AI, and some statements top down around encouraging AI and the use of AI. So I think we've got to bring it in to all levels. And I do think, leadership and executives talking about how they're using AI is a great one as well. Some companies have mandated it for the reason that you say here is that if we don't adopt it, we're going to be left in the dust. So really pressing for adoption of AI. So yeah, I think there's a lot to do around change readiness, and it's really the basics, right? This is like an email or smartphone level change to our world, in addition to all the fancy, and important and, never ending automation activities we need to do.
And Joe, I think also just to build on what Sarah's saying there, contracting the likes of Newbury to help your way through this. I was hosting a roundtable at SIA Collaboration X week before last all about this, and the main things that people are currently using this for is on the generative AI side, a little bit, but also a heck of a lot was around training and knowledge base and best practice. So I would still say it's massively underused, right, in terms of its potential for the sector, but people are rapidly catching up. So the time is now to make sure that you are not just ahead of the curve, but actually you are catching up with that and staying current. But it did strike me somewhat that a lot of the usage still seems to be centered around knowledge base, and I feel that's where you guys probably help quite a lot is to open up the possibilities of what else you could do with AI, because people I think still struggle to translate the, hey, it's great, it's going to change our lives, it's it's what we need, to actually practically, what does that look like for my business?
Yeah, it's interesting, and appreciate both of you mentioning that. And as you were speaking through it, my mind kind of went to meet the new boss, same as the old boss: adoption, communication, change management, organizational readiness. We see a lot of common threads regardless of the technology you're laying out here. So the implementation nerd in me is smiling from ear to ear. All right, I want to jump in a bit to identifying manual pain points. So I think if we kind of look at the first topic there and unpack that a tiny bit, we kind of looked at some of those trends like the adoption, the change management, policies, and communication. Sarah, you hit on how do we kind of go get ready to get started, let's transition into the getting started a bit more and identifying these manual pain points. So, Dries, one of Meet Dwight's strengths is uncovering where teams are stuck in manual work. What are some of the most surprising pain points that you've seen firms struggle with? You can go surprising or prevalent if you prefer as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's interesting looking at, obviously margins are being squeezed, operationally, that kind of EBITDA, particularly for private equity back, but even if not, the focus on EBIT and more people, I have a view on the UK and US, but more people in the US looking at outsourcing, but kind of stopping there rather than looking at technology and how that could take it a step beyond. So again, for me, where do you start? You look at where's the biggest bang for your buck? Where do I have the most operational cost in terms of people having to do things because maybe systems don't talk to each other? In practical terms, the one that I think is probably the neatest is around redeployment automation. The reason why I like that one a lot, yes, most CRMs will have a trigger to say, right, Sarah's contract is coming up in 45 days. Tells the recruiter to reach out to her because obviously you don't want to lose that candidate to your competition. Some recruiters do it. Some recruiters do it well, and other recruiters, it's pretty patchy at best, right? So you have the alerts, but it's the actions that need to happen beyond that, and that's where I think it's one of my favorite ones because it's a revenue generative kind of automation that we do for our clients, where we're making sure that consistently every single one of those candidates is being reached out to. They are presented with roles that are becoming available to them by way of that alert still happens, but then Dwight picks up to go, okay, Sarah, you are a RN nurse, you work in Texas. Here are 5 roles that Dwight can, for example, email out to say are available to you, captures the response coming back, typically via email, and then can book the candidate on and kick off the re-onboarding process. So it's those kind of things where, you're not just saving time and money for the recruiters, because you're taking that admin piece away, you're also generating more revenue because we typically say to people, if you have 1 or 2 more placements per month that way, it well and truly pays for itself and then some. So that's probably the one that I would call out. You've got your usual onboarding, credentialing, re-credentialing, compliance type, payroll type, timesheets in and out of EMSs, invoicing, but that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense, especially when you do the back of the envelope math on how long it takes to credential someone, right? Redeployment is key there. Sarah, how do these manual pain points translate into missed opportunities? So what's the knock-on effect? What's the impact when sales and recruiting are getting bogged down?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been talking about all the admin work that sales reps and recruiters do and how we don't want them to do that. We've been talking about that for a really long time, and I feel like now's our shot, There have been workflow tools over the last few years that have been amazing, and coupled with texting and email and reminders and that sort of thing. So that's great, but we layer AI in over that. I think it really can empower relationship building, and it can really, I mean, we always say we want them on the phone or texting or whatever that frontline piece looks like to create a great candidate and client experience. And I really do think we have a shot at it when we couple AI with automation and the great data that we're all enriching and improving. So if our folks are bogged down in this admin work, obviously they're not building relationships, and that's what we want them to be doing. So it's as plain as that.
Awesome. But on that point, Joe, I would also add it then comes down to good management, right? So it's one thing freeing up the recruiters. It's another thing doing it, or them doing it rather. I've got a sales background. I know what sales people are like. So just because I now have that time available, it still comes down to good man management to make sure that I'm then putting that time to use to go and talk to more candidates or clients.
That's such a great point, because I think there's a lot, rolling around in the media now about ROI and where are you getting it and how do you get it? And that's it, isn't it? It's like, oh, well, my day just got shorter as opposed to doing the right things. So that time saved has to translate into the right activities, and we understand if we're doing that through management and metrics. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Love it. Let's start with Sarah and then we can go to Dries. So if you could name one manual process that should be on every staffing leader's automation roadmap for 2025, what would it be?
You know, I personally, I feel like there's a lot of focus on recruiting. There has been, and especially recruiting in AI, and we have, you know, great vendors in our space offering us ATS with AI enablement baked in. So I think it's a little bit more a lift, but I would say on the sales side and the marketing side. And marketing, I know it's been kind of coming into its own in staffing over the last few years, but really doubling down on marketing outreach, candidate and client side, as well as any sales outreach. So you said one thing and I gave a broad category, but I would just say, you know, I feel like there's this spotlight on recruiting. And so that's great. We're getting traction there with automation for sure and AI, yes. And then I think sales and marketing just because of where our market is right now, but we can't forget the middle office either. So I did not answer your question, but I'm sticking
Everywhere.
with it. No, sales first, marketing, and then, you know, yeah. But I think we can't over focus on recruiting because our vendors are helping us so much. You know, we gotta spread out the automation piece.
Completely agree. Dries, any thoughts there on kind of that one manual process or area that every leader should be focusing on?
Yeah, I mean the one I've already pointed out, right? It's probably redeployment, but if you're a high volume temp, and particularly in a regulated kind of sector, credentialing and kind of the re-credentialing piece, man, like re-credentialing is so patchy. We know that. Again, back to the example I gave earlier, making sure you're actually doing it for each and every person or candidate you have on the books. We know it doesn't happen, and obviously that you open yourself up to risk of litigation. So, you know, automation can absolutely make sure that the credentials are checked consistently to make sure that they're also then kept up to date, right? As a follow on. So again, it's not just about an alert; it's then the action taken to get the information from the candidate and run through that process. So there's probably that one, and then the other one I would add is the rise of VMS MSP type platforms. You know, again, harping back to Collaboration X in Dallas, it was preceded by 2 days of, you know, VMS MSP conference, right? It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But the knock-on effect for a lot of staffing firms, it means I've got higher volume but lower margin business. And again, typically it means I need more people in my back office because we need to do the submittals, we need to do the time card extraction piece for all the candidates on these various platforms. And I don't just have one, I may have 5, I may have 10, I may have 15 that I have to interact with. So again, looking at that kind of back office piece and how you have to interact with VMS platforms, because as I say, higher volume but lower margin, and it's certainly on the up in terms of for a lot of segments of the staffing sector, just more and more reliance is going into those platforms.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's take a look at steps we can take toward an automated future here. So, Dries, Meet Dwight often talks about bridging the gap between where firms are today and the intelligent automated future they want. What are some of the practical steps leaders can take, this year to move in that direction? And I say this year, we have a couple months left, right? Why not get a jump start?
Yeah, so great question. Again, I do think it's about understanding your processes, but then it's what's the answer to the question? In our case, if I said to you, I can give you a digital worker that works 24/7, can do the work of up to 12 people, where would you put them? And just think about that. Where do you get the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to that? And then in readiness, again, anything you can do to really capture what the processes are. So impact and process is basically what I'm getting to. That was the prep to think about.
Awesome, thanks. So Sarah, you've helped firms actually implement automation strategies. What's a success story that you have where a firm went from manual chaos to seeing ROI and saying like, okay, the vision has come to fruition here?
There's so many examples of that, and I'm sure you have a million of those too in your role. But I was just going to pick a really kind of simple one to say, like the one maybe I heard most recently was a company that, they're professional staffing, so resumes are everything, and they were spending quite a bit of time. It was taking time, and there was a delay in the handoff to get that resume formatted. So as simple as that little thing, using an AI driven tool to automate formatting and branding those and properly, and saving 6 figures on that. So, I mean, just the simple things. Sometimes I feel like we look for the big shiny things, the big stories, and it's the things that automating the things that those salespeople and recruiters do every day. You know, creating their call list, dialing, like things like texting, bulk texting, like it's the little things. Spending time writing or getting stuck in the analysis paralysis and research. It's those little things that people are doing. Um, these frontline folks are doing multiple times a day. That's where the best business cases are.
And try it, right? Try something
Yeah.
like to your point of paralyzation. It's like not doing anything is worse than trying something and it not working out, and you going, okay, well, next time we'll do this, and then that does work out. So, or it will just succeed, from the off, especially again, with the helps of yourselves on things like user adoption. Where do you need to focus? So just try it, like do something, because if you don't, it's only going to become harder then for you guys to roll that out to the business, and you're going to be behind your competition.
Yeah.
Dries, I suspect I know your answer here, but looking ahead, if a staffing firm does nothing to address these issues, where will they be in 2 or 3 years, compared to firms who are leaning into AI readiness and automation right now? I don't know if you want to expand on your last thought there a
Was that
little
me?
bit.
Sorry, or Sarah? You were
Yeah,
asking.
sorry. So I was opening that up to you,
Okay.
Dries, because I
Yeah.
think really kind of it extends on the point you were just making there with
I mean,
paralysis by analysis.
I don't want to be over dramatic, like the headline answer would be, well, they won't be around, Joe, in 3 years' time. But I don't think that's quite the case. I think it will just become increasingly harder. I look at some of the businesses that we've engaged where I remember the president of the company saying to all of his heads, right, you need to come up with 3 use cases for each of your, so kind of part answering the previous question as well. If you're a leader, think about the kind of management team underneath you and go, right, what are the 3 areas in each of your teams that might be good use cases, and let's talk about those. So that's kind of how we engage with this one particular customer. We then looked, well, they were a prospect at the time. We then looked at the use cases, and I remember then picking up the phone to their president to say, hey, we can help you guys, but I'm not sure, you're such a nice business, I'm not sure that culturally you're going to have those difficult conversations, right? Because people are being repurposed, and some people, maybe moved out of the organization to achieve some of the savings. And his answer was this, and this is what I want to use. He said, Dries, if you get the impression from my heads of that we won't make the changes, you need to let me know, because if we don't, we won't be around. Because ultimately, again, margins are being squeezed. It's an increasingly more competitive environment. I don't think for a minute AI will take over all of staffing and take recruiters' jobs, particularly in executive search. By the way, I think that's it was interesting, again, talking to a private equity firm just yesterday, and there's a lot of PE noise in exec because they can see that area of the staffing sector, being pretty well protected from automation and so on, and the premiums possibly going up. But yeah, that would be for me the way to think about it. Is competition is getting tougher, margins are being squeezed. You need to explore all different avenues to improve your EBIT, and this is definitely a key one that if you do it well, you can get well ahead of the competition.
Awesome. Sarah, any additional thoughts you want to offer there on kind of the contrast? Or
yeah, I would say that sounds great from an enterprise level, all of that, absolutely. But I would say then I'll just take the other side of it, which is that from the personal or professional side, everyone who's on this call listening to this recording is you got to make that change today, not because necessarily your job is going to go away, not from that angle, but I'll take more of a positive angle, which is it's really fun to use. I get to automate the things I don't like to do or I'm not very good at. I have a thought partner, somebody who's going to write for me, who's going to, be a devil's advocate on my own terms. I can ask all the dumb questions. I don't have any unanswered questions anymore. So I would say, from a personal level, today, what you need to do is create a custom GPT or GEM, create a project, start experimenting with those kinds of things and, embrace it, because that's the way to go, right? It's here. Smartphones aren't going away. Email to texting isn't going away. AI isn't going away. So I think let's embrace it and see what it can do for us.
Awesome. I love that. All right. Well, big thank you to Dries and Sarah for joining us today, and thank you to everyone who joined the webinar as well. As an outcome from the meeting, you'll receive a follow-up with the recording, the deck, links to our upcoming sessions. Be sure to go sign up for our final webinar in the series, Find Fast, Engage Smarter, Place Better, the New Rules of Recruiting. Feel free to contact us. You can scan. Feel free to contact us. You can scan